I represent GA recipients who are trying to get SSI, and in addition, I've designed this mass defense project to deal with the crisis that most of the GA recipients are going to be facing on April 1. The county is going to cut 7,000 people off of GA if they are classified as employable or able to work. And there's only 10,000 people on the welfare rolls, so that's just about everyone. What we're going to learn today is how to help people stay on GA, and if they're going to get kicked off GA, how to request a hearing, and then the step-by-step process that we're going to do to help people do that. My colleague Andy Kramer is also here from Homeless Action Center. Hey Andy! He works in the Berkeley office, I work in the Oakland office. The Berkeley office is at 3126 Shattuck, and the Oakland office is at 1432 Franklin Street. We're free attorneys, we don't cost anything, so we'll never charge you for anything that we do. So by 1943, World War II, the war economy had jolted this economy back. And so a lot of the New Deal programs were scaled back, and control over relief was passed back to the states. So the federal government took hands off, and it went back to the states. So today's income assistance welfare program has pretty much been the same since 1943. You have to fit into a special category of persons. You have to have very, very limited income and very limited resources. That is nothing that you can turn into cash. You can't sell it to turn into cash. Next slide. So federal and state laws govern most of the benefits, and as you know, each agency has its own regulations that it promulgates. So Alameda County's regulations and why they're able to do this is different than the regulations in every other county in California. So if you go to Lake County or Lassen County or Mendocino or Napa, LA, they're all different. And so it's really difficult to become an expert in even California's welfare system, because every county gets to decide how they want to disperse the welfare. It's a really messed up system. And I think that's why so few people know how to advocate for their rights, because if you go from San Francisco to Alameda, you have to read like 54 pages of regulations to understand the welfare system here, and nobody's going to do that. So this is what GA benefit is based on. It's based on this really old, like 1960s estimate of what the cost of living was. It's really ridiculous. It hasn't changed since the 1960s. The cost of living is supposed to be 33% of cost of living was food. Poverty line equals 3 times the cost of food in the early 1960s. So the GA grant level is deemed sufficient at 62% of the 1991 poverty line, which means there hasn't been any cost of living adjustment since 1991, and that 1991 number is based on the cost of living in 1960. Next slide. So this is the first time Alameda County has done this. In 1996, the month after Bill Clinton signed in welfare reform, Alameda County brought down 3-month time limits. And the results were so catastrophic that the agency repealed those time limits, but first they commissioned a study from the Berkeley School of Public Policy and School of Social Welfare. And they looked at how cutting people off after 3 months affected their employment, food, housing, health, and substance abuse, and their health. Next slide. Not surprisingly, people don't find jobs if you kick them off of welfare after 3 months. Indeed, that study found that 37% of the people who were kicked off found no job at all. A third of the people. 44% reported doing odd jobs for income, which is not, it's not full-time or even part-time work. 19% found a traditional job at some point after losing benefits, but only 8% found full-time work. So you cut off people after 3 months. It's not going to force people to get a job. It's not like people aren't motivated or incentivized to get jobs. Everyone wants a job. There just aren't any jobs out there. By GA, 95% of those recipients were living in some kind of residence before they got cut off. The employable ones were. This number dropped to 63%. These time limits make people homeless. Of those who moved, 1 in 5 were now living on the street. So it made 20% of the people who moved homeless. Also, not surprisingly, if you lose your GA, a lot of times you lose your food stamps. Not because they're connected. You can keep your food stamps and not be on GA. But the study found that for whatever reason, people don't keep up on their food stamps. So over half lost their food stamps. 53% went hungry for at least 1 day during the week, and 29%, almost 30%, went hungry for 2 to 3 days during the past week. So we've got to stop them from cutting as many people off as possible, and that's what this project is all about. Next slide. Also, people reported declines in their health. Visits to the emergency room went up. and also visits to Santa Rita Jail went up. If you give people nothing, we think people will do what they need to do to survive.